Less than 5 years ago, Intel powered every single Mac. Today, they're gone. Apple is having a Mac renaissance, and Intel is the worst performing stock in the S&P 500. In the last 3 months alone, Intel stock prices dropped by over 30%. And in the list of semiconductor companies which they used to top, they're now behind Nvidia, TSMC, Broadcom, ASML, Samsung, AMD and Qualcomm. Now obviously it would be easy to say that this is because of Apple Silicon and Intel's loss of sales that used to go into Macs. I mean obviously that's a part of it, but it's a pretty small one. Mac is only around about 9.5% of the personal computer market in terms of market share, so yes, it would hurt, but it's not enormous. The bigger issue here is the performance of Apple Silicon, especially at its efficiency. It's turned a lot of heads away from x86 in general, from AMD and Intel's chips to other architectures like ARM, which Apple designs their cores around, RISC-V and others. And that hurts Intel disproportionately compared to AMD, for example, for a couple of reasons. First, Intel is very dependent on CPUs, with their one and only generation of Arc graphics cards having been released so far, with, let's say, underwhelming reception, while AMD does CPUs and a whole bunch of GPUs too, spreading the risk. But also x86 is Intel's, and Intel licensed the instruction set to AMD. We're already seeing Qualcomm bringing the Snapdragon X Elite and the Bin Plus version, admittedly created by the team at Nuvia that Qualcomm acquired after it was set up by, drumroll please, ex-Apple Silicon engineers. Now that's the one that they've been teasing the performance of since the start of the year, even though you can't buy it yet. And while leaked benchmarks put it ahead of M3 in multi-core, if behind it in single-core, the M4 that Apple announced last week beats it. And remember, the X Elite is the top of the line for Qualcomm. M4 is Apple's base chip. But it does show that other companies are enthusiastic about ARM and RISC chips, as Microsoft Surface will have Snapdragon as an option again. Just as you have the option to subscribe. I'm just saying, it's an option. That one change means that Microsoft is taking ARM seriously too, and Windows is pushing hard, with a similar translation layer to Apple's Rosetta 2, so the x86 code should run pretty seamlessly on ARM, if likely with a performance penalty. But it's not just the desktop. Less people are actually buying laptops and desktops now, and there are very, very few true tablets, and I'm pretty sure no phones that run x86 silicon. And that's all that a lot of people are buying these days. With more and more compute moving to the cloud and to web apps, server-based AI processing, and even cloud gaming, with Xbox Cloud, Nvidia GeForce Now, and more, meaning your internet speed is a lot more important in a lot of ways than the hardware you're running. But doesn't Intel still have the speed advantage? Maybe not for long. Right now, the fastest chip on the market from Intel is the Core i9 14900KS. Such a snappy title. With single-core scores around 3300 and multi-core of 24,000. Now, it's a 24-core chip, just like the M2 Ultra, and yes, right now it is ahead of the M2 Ultra, which is trailing on 2800 and 21,500. So that Intel chip, though, is using about 320 watts at its peak, which is exactly what it's going to be doing during these benchmarks, whereas the M2 Ultra uses just 90 watts. And that M2 Ultra also includes its onboard graphics, not just the CPU. The graphics are no slouch either, with Tech Radar comparing the performance to an Nvidia 4070 Notebook Edition in terms of raw performance. But before you get down in my comments section, which is fine, I know that you will not get comparable game performance because you know it's a Mac and game optimization still has a lot of work to do. But that 4070 notebook chip will draw another 115 watts on top of the CPU, so yeah, efficiency is definitely an advantage here. In case that wasn't enough, the 14900KS had the fastest single-core performance in Geekbench. That is until Apple's M4 chip benchmarks leaked last week. The M4 destroys it. 3,700 points in single core, 400 more than the Intel, in the thinnest ever fanless iPad Pro. Now you know as well as I do that that i9 sounded like a Boeing taking off, albeit briefly before probably crashing back into the runway because it's a Boeing. Of course the M4 doesn't come close in multi-core, but its big brothers Max and Ultra probably will. Not to mention the rumoured M4 Extreme chips that may finally make the Mac Pro just make a little bit of sense. So is Intel dead? No, not yet, but they are circling the drain, and they're being nudged closer from a bunch of different directions. Is it just a matter of time? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you to my Patreons, and I will see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.